All right, Mr. Ben Emmrich,
Hello, Mr. Mark.
how's it going?
I'm good, dude.
So here we are at the BGSA 2026 conference in lovely West Palm Beach.
Fanciest place in America, I think.
I think so. I mean, probably because you and I are here.
I think no offense to you, but I definitely bring down the average in the fancy department.
I'm right there with you. This is what have you thought about the conference so far?
Honestly, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a natural extrovert, and my wife gives me a lot of shit for it. But like, I love being surrounded by folks that are beyond where my business is at, and I can pick their brain.
Oh, sure.
Honestly. And like, I like the morning sessions, all the macro like data that they share. I thought that stuff is super helpful.
I completely agree. The first session, getting to hear, from the gentleman with Seco, Penske, GXO. I know there was one other one in there too.
I also really like Ben's presentation.
His presentation was very good.
Like he I think he does it every year, but the one graph where he has like the big circles.
Yep.
I find that so helpful to see a relative mix of like revenue by supply chain category by profitability.
Yep.
It's like, oh, like it makes sense why when I call on this type of potential customer that I always get shown the door, or the screws get turned on me hard on margin.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, they're below zero on the revenue line. It's like, okay, well, it's just like a nice like validation of like what I'm actually seeing in the market.
Yeah, I also think, AI has been a huge focus of this show so far, and which is not surprising.
Yeah.
But I do like the tie, I think they showed that Stanford graph that showed like by the belief by sector, what how much cost would be saved, and then how much revenue would be added as a result of deploying AI, and just seeing that supply chain from the cost perspective is one of the top benefactors of AI. I mean, it certainly feels that way, but nice to see that. I think that was a Stanford report. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. But so we met last night.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about Tusk.
Yeah. So, well, if it's okay, like I will tell you about Tusk, but it's helpful to like first describe like how I found my way to this industry.
I would love that.
So I started at Google in 2008. And I was like a Latin major. I was lucky to get the job. I was a pre-recession hire. So I like snuck in.
Do you remember any of the weird questions that they asked you during your hiring process?
Oh, dude. Yes. Well, sorry. I remember the ones that I prepared for. So like,
how many marbles in a 747?
Yeah. How many ping pong balls in a school bus? And you're supposed to ask like, well, are the seats in the school bus or are the seats out of the school bus? Like, what is this, like a shorter bus, a longer bus, but flat front or long front? Like, no. So I started at Google, and I did a lot of like very low level support roles, but then I found my way to the Google shopping team. And at the Google shopping team, I was responsible for managing really bureaucratic big retailers like Walmart, Target, Costco. And what I found was I was really good at navigating bureaucracy. And my manager came to me one day and he's like, hey, Emmrich, you're doing good with these big retailers. You are now responsible for managing parcel carriers. So I inherited responsibility for FedEx and UPS and the Postal Service. And so that was my first foray into like negotiating rate cards. Like I made so many mistakes. Like I had no idea what a GRI was. And like one January, I got an email from my account manager and he's like, yep, the GRI is in place. FYI, like you have, 4% higher. I was like, what is this? 4%? You kidding me? And like, I stepped on a lot of landmines just not knowing what I was doing, but I came up to speed quick. And more importantly, I realized like, I really like
Logistics.
Small parcel. Like this is cool. Like, because my brain is a tactical brain. And I love that there is a physical item being moved in the real world between point A and point B. It is not theoretical. Like it has to get from Chattanooga to Newark. And like, how are you going to get it there? Is it going to go on the truck? Is it going to go on the plane? this is also like 2014, 2015, 2016, when like e-com has really, really obviously hit its stride, but like all of the systems weren't in place. And like everything was in its like early infancy from a tech perspective, and definitely on the parcel carrier side, like they hadn't figured out a lot of this stuff. And so I was just like really enamored with this whole ecosystem of e-commerce, small parcel, warehousing and logistics, like the opportunities that you could squeeze, the not just the operational benefit, but also like the customer experience, the retention. Like, so long story short, I spent 10 years at Google, and then I was recruited to Shippo. So I led carrier partnerships at Shippo for 4 years. Also like sold Shippo's API into like the OMS, TMS, IMS ecosystem within e-commerce warehouses, and really learned that space. Did a lot of deals with carriers though. Like that was my core, like really, really deep in the carrier ecosystem. And what I found was there is a ton of value hidden within what we now call alternative carriers. But back then we only called them regional carriers. So like GLS, who used to be called Golden State Overnight, GSO, before they were bought by GLS. On Track, Laser Ship, like
Lone Star Overnight,
CDL. These are like long-standing, often family businesses. Still to this day, many of them are family businesses. Like to get a deal done with UDS in Chicago or in Lombard, right outside of Chicago, you got to call Ron Castaldo, and it's Ron and his brother, and his son Ronnie is now like coming up in the business. And like it's awesome. It's like long-standing, profitable, dependable businesses that can do deliveries for, 30 to 40% less expensive than a UPS or a FedEx. And so I'm at Shippo and I'm doing all these deals, and I'm like, I feel like I've found Noah's Ark. I'm like, oh my God, like there's all this savings here. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we so focused on these national guys? And like, it's then that I saw like the very first images of the problems that I would then build Tusk to solve, which is like, why can't shippers access these alternative carriers at scale? And the answer is just so many reasons.
Yeah.
They don't know they exist. They don't know who to call. Like literally they can't find the phone number because they don't list the phone number on their website.
No, you're right.
When they call, they don't know what that carrier excels at. Like some of these guys are really good at big bulky. Some of these guys are really good between 1 pound and 15. Some of them are really good below a pound. Some of them are really good in the Southeast, but you got to know they're not live in like tier 2 metros in the Southeast. They're only tier 1 metro. Like there's so much nuance. And so at Shippo, I found out the hard way, like why shippers aren't using these carriers. And I went deep trying to convince people to use them, trying to convince that organization, Shippo, to like invest in them.
Right.
And quite honestly, for the right reasons, they said, we can really focus on our core, which is the national carriers. And we can really make more money that way. And so for us, or for me, it was like a really interesting moment in my career where I had to kind of decide, like, put up or shut up. Like, if you think this is a good idea, Ben, you think you can do it, like, pony up and like go fucking do it. You know, it was, and I should acknowledge too, like my wife at the time was working at Google still. Like we had met at Google, and so like we had a bit of like a breathing room as a family for me to take a real swing.
Sure. And
I'm so thankful for it. And so yeah, in 2021, I left Shippo and later started Tusk that year.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so what Tusk is, so long way of saying what Tusk is we are shipping infrastructure, and we make alternative carriers universally accessible and useful and visible. So if you're a shipper in the United States and you do small parcel, you will be able to save money with the carriers that Tusk has in its network, and we're the infrastructure used to connect to carriers like DoorDash, GLS, UDS, Better Truck, CDL. We have 17 carriers live today, 14 of which we have pre-negotiated rates with, but we also support shippers' rates as well. So we are not a reseller. We don't aggregate volume and hold volume hostage. We can use the shipper's rates. They could use our own. The North Star is value to the shipper.
Okay. Let's pause there, and we're going to come back to all of that because I want to talk about Um, you know, one of the I don't want to say the boogeyman or anything like that, but
There's a lot of boogeyman.
oh, there really are.
There truly are.
And I heard probably 15 years ago that the boogeyman Chuck. It's like when the boogeyman goes to bed, he checks underneath his bed for Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about Chuck Norris jokes in a long time. But all right, China is making big inroads into the United States.
Yes.
And into our parcel, not only the parcel network, parcel delivery, but also in the 3PL side of things.
Well, and I think we should also just acknowledge, like, Chinese merchants and Chinese economic engines of all different ways, shapes, or form are making their way into the United States.
Correct.
Like, if you just look at Amazon, if you do a search for like iPhone charger on Amazon, or if you do a search for literally anything on Amazon, like, how many of those marketplace merchants are, first of all, from outside the United States, and secondly, from China or a similar market?
The majority.
The majority, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I just want to kind of like position the inroads in the small parcel space reflect the trends that are happening within the economy writ large, and it is natural that like these forces would find their way to small parcel.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, you've got, and I mean, just to be specific, I'll avoid any names or anything like that, but you've got some Chinese 3PLs coming to town, highly automated. And, one of the strategies I see being used is they'll effectively, they'll work with the Chinese sellers, and there's that, the language understanding, cultural fit, all that kind of good stuff. And they say, okay, we've got a beachhead here in the United States, and you don't have to sell through Amazon. Maybe you still want to do through Amazon's fulfillment system, but now your Shein and Temu and TikTok Shop and all these sorts of things are gonna they've got an outlet to move a lot of volume for very, very cheap. And they're taking effectively from time of order, they'll go the order, and because they do such volume in these facilities, let's just say 100,000, 200,000 orders out of a singular facility in just a normal day, they now have a truckload worth of stuff going from Southern California to Kentucky to a spot in Kentucky, and they've got a truckload or three or four, whatever it is, going to Dallas and the surrounding metro areas. And so what they're doing is they're handling that first mile and middle mile, and then they get it to Dallas, and they use the regional carrier that they do. And so it's like, let's say that last mile delivery fee is 90 cents. And then they've just now taken, let's say you can get 10,000 orders on a truck, even if it costs you $4,000 to move it across the country, that's 40 cents a package.
Oh, yeah.
So in that scenario, it's $1.30 for shipping.
Well, I think that dynamic is not unique to new entrants into the United States 3PL ecosystem. Like, we've been seeing Amazon do this for decades.
Yep.
Walmart, decades. Like the big buildings, the big facilities with significant throughput have always had their head on a swivel to squeeze out cost.
Yep.
What is the easiest way in final mile to squeeze out cost? Number one, pick up the phone and call your rep and ask for a discount. That's the easiest way.
Right.
But after that, zone skipping becomes, because that's what we're describing here.
That's exactly right.
Zone skipping becomes a very visceral, clear, kind of black and white way for you to lower the effective rate for final mile parcel delivery. So any building that has significant throughput that can fill up an asset, and now that asset could be a Gaylord or a pallet that you LTL across the country. It could be a box truck that you drive. It could be a cargo van that you drive. It could be a 53-footer that you drop every day. You do a drop trailer service and you have enough volume to, 26 pallets that fit in the 53-footer. But zone skipping is an incredible lever to find value. And if the building has the throughput, they should absolutely be doing it. And when they drive it, the beauty is they have control over where they drop it. So what we see a lot of value is when we run zone skips, we don't just inject into one option, one carrier option. So when we do a zone skip from Kansas City to Chicago, we often are making like 3 to 4 stops. And we backload the trailer, so the last stop gets loaded first, and we train the teams to do this. But we can make multiple stops because at point of origin at the pack station, we've already determined who can deliver that parcel for the least amount of money on the final mile. We then run it from KC to Chicago. We make those stops. We inject it into the parcel carriers. Throughout the whole process, we've linked the tracking. So the freight tracking links to the final mile tracking across all those carriers. Because when you run the zone skip, you're in control. Take advantage of the control. Maximize the value. If you're going to pay for the truck, like use the truck.
Right.
That's the power.
Yep. And so, the the common thread I keep hearing is volume. If you have the volume, well, not everybody's running, 100,000 orders a day out of their facility and have the volume to fill up a few trucks with, going to these regional hubs. So then, what's?
Yeah, no. This is absolutely the way. This is a great question. So, the answer is, zone skipping makes a lot of sense on average when you're doing roughly 10,000 pieces a day or more. I guarantee you, for someone doing that level of volume, there is a single lane or a single carrier where a zone skip is likely to make sense. But on your way to 10,000 parcels per day out of a single facility, you should first ask yourself, what are the local alternatives to my facility that don't require the complexity of a zone skip, that I could, they're local to me, so they have drivers in my neighborhood, and I could do I could reach out to a GLS on the West Coast, and I could do a deal with them to cut my FedEx rates by 30% for any West Coast bound parcel. Okay, you start local. That savings and that margin, you then, throw back into your business, helps you grow faster. Then when you get to call it 10,000 pieces a day, that's when, okay, now it makes sense to run something from LA to Chicago or LA to Dallas. We do pooled volume in certain areas, so we can combine customers' volume. So a Tusk shipper can actually have access to more line hauls than if they were doing it on their own. But even independent of Tusk, the first question is, well, what my advice is always, call your rep to ask for a discount. Just do it. Do it tomorrow. Do it today. Call your rep, ask for a discount. The second thing is look at your data and ask yourself, okay, even locally to my facility, what alternative carriers could I use? And you could learn, you can just search for alternative parcel carriers in Miami. The answer is Courier Express, DoorDash, GoFo, Uni. But any market, just do a little bit of research and then ask yourself, okay, is it worth my time to call these people, get rates, do it myself? The answer will often be no. Or maybe one of them can give you a good enough rate that it makes sense to go direct. And then once you're at real throughput, 10,000 pieces or more per day on average, that's when you could have your ops team start to really look at line hauls.
Nice. So what we've talked about is we've actually talked about going the zone skipping and then really contracting with the regionals. What are the big players doing? Is there a possibility to do zone skipping with the larger players? I spoke. There's another pod that I've done recently with. It's forthcoming. It'll drop after this one. But one of his strategies was saying, well, if you're in a huge market that has crazy holiday peak volumes, then what you can end up doing is you can just talk to them and you can say, hey, what if we move instead of Ontario, where we know you're going to be overloaded? What if we just send all of our UPS volume down to or over to Tucson or Phoenix or whatever it may be, and then would that help? Or Yuma, whatever it may be. What kind of are you seeing those kind of scenarios with the larger players?
That level of nuance, to be blunt, no. That level of nuance happens at the worldwide sales team for UPS, who has 5 to 10 people managing an Amazon, that's when they are probably sitting down and saying, like, you know, the Amazon team would say to the UPS team, like, hey, we project a ton of volume into your Chicago hub. We know that the amount of volume we have bound for your Chicago hub is likely to like push you beyond your limits.
Right.
Therefore, as close partners with more bandwidth than most operational teams, where should we put a portion of this volume other than that hub, because we know that one will be at capacity. But that is like a level of sophistication, to be clear, Mark, that like even the largest 3PLs, they don't get to that level of nuance and planning. Most really good, really big 3PLs are doing their own zone skips to a degree. What they, in my experience, what they miss out on is the tracking. So if they run it themselves, it's not tracked oftentimes.
Right.
They also, as they should, they just prioritize the lanes and they do the easy ones.
Sure.
And often that's enough bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And they kind of like activate the lanes that make sense to activate, or they'll say, hey, we're going to run zone skips, but we're only going to do it for lanes that we can get a full trailer on. When they might have other lanes that they could run a box truck, but they just don't want to deal with the complexity of having to broker a box truck and full trailers.
Yep.
So the answer to your question is the big 3PLs are doing zone skips, but that level of like hub inject optimization, that's very unique and for the biggest shippers in the United States only today.
And what's interesting, I mean, I'm sure that there are probably at least 4 or 5 companies at this situation that could give that tracking visibility, just because of, with all the new technological improvements that are happening faster than anybody can keep up with. I would imagine that they just give them this tracking number at this website and they'll be able to track it.
I mean, it's not rocket science. So the way we do it is we just went out and integrated with Trucker Tools, MacroPoint, Samsara, like all of the freight tracking platforms, so that no matter which driver got a load via our broker, we can track that load. Or our broker will manually track it in the very rare case that they don't have one of the ones we're integrated on. And then we just built the ecosystem and the technology to basically link the freight tracking to the final mile tracking.
Right.
And we just link them as the same record. So a customer gets consistent updates, because that's the worst, is when they don't see their parcel move.
Right.
That's when they're, calling the merchant saying, where's my piece? I bought it on Monday. I expected it to be processed by Tuesday. It's Thursday. I haven't had an update. Meanwhile, it's been zone skipped, so it's in the middle of the desert on its way to LA,
Right.
Yeah.
But you brought up like even the largest 3PLs don't have the nuance, and you lose out on the tracking. And that is kind of like where you're sitting in between, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and we are infrastructure. We are not the carrier.
Right.
So this is why people pay us to be the infrastructure that, when sometimes they broker that zone skip themselves, and sometimes we broker it for them. But regardless, it is our tech that can link the tracking of the freight lane to the final mile.
Yep.
And like, it's the visibility on the tracking, Mark, but it's also things like tracking performance by alternative carrier hub. So knowing like, hey, this alternative carrier has 7 hubs. 6 of them are performing wonderfully. 1 of them is horrible. Turn down or turn off the horrible one and reroute the parcel volume to a different alternative that still beats your FedEx rate, but might be more expensive slightly than...
You get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, right?
We're still going to save money, but not as much.
Yeah, but and also, to be clear, some shippers don't care about on-time performance. Like the items, for whatever reason, the proper expectation has been set that as long as they're delivered within 10 days, they don't care. So it's up to the shipper. You empower the shipper to make the call.
Here's a question for you. Have you thought about, and far be it from me, I mean, I think you probably think about this all the time. So you're going to be like, yeah, I thought about that like week 2. Adding an insurance layer on there.
Here's my approach to insurance. Tusk negotiates with every alternative carrier to cover every parcel with $100 of insurance.
So similar, right?
Beyond that, it is up to the shipper to insure via their own insurance mechanism. there's opportunities, quite honest, like we could go do a deal with like Cover Genius or Shipsurance or whatever. Shipsurance got bought, I think. So, but like we could go do a deal and then sell insurance to our shippers. It's not at our scale. It just doesn't make sense to focus on, to be quite honest.
So it at a certain point it may be.
Yes.
And especially as you offer more white glove type stuff. So I like this. There's this knife brand out of San Diego, former SEAL team guy, and his band of merry men make these custom knives, and they all find they've all got a blueprint, but maybe there's 10 styles or 20 styles, whatever it may be, but they've got these really ornate, beautiful handles and like cool etchings and stuff like that. Half face blades, but I've bought a couple knives from there. And every time they ship to me, it's not an option. You have to insure it for like $7.99, $8.99.
Oh yeah, like there's a lot of like Shopify apps, like a Route,
right.
like where you can for 99 cents. They basically say like, hey, listen, pay 99 cents now, and we'll make this right if something goes bad, or we could use the insurance. Or if you forego this 99 cents, no matter what happens, it's on you,
right,
customer. So, and like that's fair, quite honestly.
So I think it's an interesting thing though, because if you think you've got a whole truckload full of these orders, and let's say you're selling high volume stuff or high value stuff, you could eventually get this. I mean, God forbid the whole truck burns up. It happens, but there seems to be like a really interesting potential insurance kind of arbitrage situation there.
There totally is. There
just
totally
not
is.
Just not.
It's
not
like,
the current focus.
It is. I have learned as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've learned the same thing. There is as much power in saying no to opportunities as there is saying yes.
Yes.
And if my team ever hears me say that out loud, they will laugh because I'm the one that's always chasing the bright, shiny thing. But for me, insurance is a compelling thing we could do in the future if we choose to.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's play. And we can talk in general terms. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on any of this, but
you can hold my feet to the fire.
Let's start. Let's start at $10 and just say $10 represents me going into a FedEx and saying I have this 10 by 10 by 10 inch package that's 4 or 5 pounds, whatever it may be, and they're gonna charge me $10 for it.
Okay. Well, this is I love this.
Okay.
I think about this all the time. Okay. So what they'll say to you is, "Hey, Mark, thank you so much for coming in. It's $10 to ship this." You say, "Okay, great." And then when they ring you up, it's actually going to be like $14.20, and you're going to be like, "What the hell?" I'm in Texas. Sales tax is not 42%. Oh, sorry, Mark. That's actually the fuel surcharge, and that's the resi surcharge. That's cost of doing business.
Yeah.
So say it's $14.20 retail loaded. Okay. So you go back to your office, you call the UPS rep. So you call the 1-800 number, you get a rep on the phone. They give you a standard commercial discount. Your base rate would likely go from $10 to call it $8. And the surcharges would go from $4.20 to maybe call it $3. You get call it 25% discount on the surcharges. So you're paying $11 loaded.
Yep.
With a regional carrier for that piece, you should expect to pay roughly $6.50 to $7 loaded. So there's just a massive amount of savings, especially over a pound. Over a pound, there is between 30 and 40% effective savings. And by the way, that $6.50 to $7, that includes fuel, resi. Now, if you give them a piece that's 60 pounds instead of 6, they're going to catch that and they'll charge you an overage and stuff like that. These are sophisticated operations. But
so will FedEx.
All right. So the next question that you should ask is how do these carriers do it? What's the magic? The magic is they only run operations in zip codes, delivery zip codes, where they have the density to be profitable. They don't have a universal service obligation that the Postal Service has by law and UPS and FedEx have by kind of tradition.
Right.
FedEx, UPS, Postal, they have to make more on DAS and EDAS, so rural deliveries, and their urban deliveries where they can make more margin have to pay for the ones where they lose money. So these alternative carriers could be much more surgical. Their operation can run at a much more efficient OpEx, and they pass the savings along in the form of lower prices. The challenge is just there's a lot of alternative carriers, and you got to know which one to use and how to use them and unify the tracking. And, if you call them and do a deal direct, you have to commit volume it's just like it's difficult and complex. And like our platform's the first one that has built it to operate at scale.
So is this making a case for more consolidation or less consolidation with the regionals?
Ooh, great question. To be blunt, I think that and we just saw this. So recently, about a week and a half ago, one alternative carrier, a long-standing alternative carrier, they went out of business. They were called the Fast Group. So in August, 3 alternative carriers had been brought under the same umbrella of the Fast Group. So those carriers were ACI Logistics, Sendle, and First Mile. And they went out of business. So this isn't like consolidation per se, but like this ecosystem is super dynamic.
It was an M&A play that did not go well.
Correct.
Yes.
The bet, so they had a PE sponsor that brought them together. The bet was that they could recapitalize the business or raise funds to keep operations going, that they would see efficiencies from combining teams. And, for whatever reason, I have no insight into it other than to know the reality is that it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And like the alternative carrier ecosystem is more dynamic. Like UPS and FedEx make billions and billions and billions of dollars. Even the biggest alternative carriers make single-digit billions, and really that's like 1 or maybe 2, depending on how much of like DoorDash's meal delivery credit you give to them, their parcel arm. But
this dynamic's interesting because it's like you look at. I don't know exactly how I would really compare. I mean, it's the same kind of story where it's like Coca-Cola's they've got their core, and in order for them to continue to grow, they try to grow Coke into more markets. They do Coke Zero. They've got Diet Coke. They've got variations, and then they try to get more people to just drink Coke. Mm-hmm. But they're also
or they put Coke in different form factors, like restaurants and
Slurpees.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, but. So that's one way they grow, but then the way that you've seen a lot of their meaningful growth is that they grow or they purchase. I don't know. I think Dasani might be Coca-Cola, but they purchase a lot of. I know Pepsi purchased. They purchased like Siete chips. They've purchased, I believe Yerba Madre. I think is what it's called, which used to be called Guayaki Yerba Mate. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I thought they did, but anyway. In the warehousing space, you see the really large public players, and each of those guys have got 5 to 10% net profits. And this is on billions of dollars. So I think I looked. I think it was GXO had something like $3 billion, and of that they had 500 million. No, 57 million. I think it was in net profits. So it's just like. But if you look at a really, really solid, regional 3PL, single location, you can find people that are out there doing, 15% net margins. And so it's interesting because on the one side, the regional carriers are far more right-sized with the assets that they have, what they're running. Their sortation facilities are more right-sized. It's like, they stay much better within a band, and they're able to control their costs better. Whereas sometimes, but you've got FedEx and UPS have got these huge fleets. And in the last couple of years, Amazon took all that volume away from UPS, and now they've got all this.
Well, yeah, and you're seeing them report out like UPS is, turning facilities off.
Correct.
They've been publicly reporting this. Isn't like anything inside. It's like they are right-sizing their operation to match where they believe not the volume, but where the margin will come from.
Right.
And so you're seeing really compelling moves that a Carol Tomé and her team are making at UPS that really prioritizes higher margin parcels, not more low margin parcels.
Right.
And this isn't rocket science, but like healthcare is a huge focus for the carriers.
They just did that large acquisition.
100%. SMB, right? SMB shippers. So a lot of like the channel partner strategy that all carriers, but especially, really forward thinking bigger ones like UPS, like they have the DAP program, the digital access program that puts UPS accounts into the hands of SMBs that probably wouldn't have gotten a
Right.
call from a UPS rep. And it's like a really compelling way to start the relationship earlier than they would have via digital channel at a high margin. Like it's super compelling, super smart. But it's the margin focus, not the volume focus. And it used to always be volume. I want more volume.
Yeah.
I want to cube out my building. And now it's like, well, I'm not going to give you that discount. When you had 5 tiers, now it's 3. Like they're optimizing for margin, not volume.
Isn't it interesting if you see when you have somebody that's got a small fiefdom, they're able to operate it far, not always, but in a lot of cases, far more efficiently and profitably than when you've got this giant country. If you just want to like look at the two things, and it kind of harkens back to that. I think it was Nassim Taleb, the Black Swan guy, anti-fragile guy, who said that the small villages in, like, I think he used Switzerland as an example, where he said, look, when you have regulation and basically government so localized, and the person who's doing the most impactful, writing the most impactful laws is going to run into at the grocery store, you have a much more benevolent, tailored society. And it's people are a lot happier because they can go look at him and they can be like, ah, da, 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 da.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I live in Chicago, and in Chicago we have aldermen,
right?
And there's been arguments like, oh, we have 50 aldermen in the city, and like you think Chicago, that's not a lot. It's actually like I know my aldermen,
right?
And like I can go to the office and like, yeah, I can like talk to Daniel Espada, my alderman. But yeah, I get it 100%. It's like the familiarity of that. The level of like nuance that an ops manager at a smaller op can see and feel, like it leads to often a more efficient operation that can do the work for less.
Right.
The challenge is you got to go op by op, market by market. Like the scale of a UPS and a FedEx in our ecosystem is like, it's unparalleled, man. It's awesome.
So then here's the question. Do you think putting the effort in and establishing it market by market by market by market is more or less fragile than going just with like a UPS? Not like let's.
Yeah, well, I think it is less fragile, aka better, to have more optionality. But every organization and every operation will have a different threshold of what optionality means. And for some carriers, for some shippers, that'll mean I actually only add FedEx and UPS. It won't even be alts, right? It won't even be alternatives. For some, it'll be like, I'm going to add one alternative. For some, it'll be, I'm going to add 10 alternatives. Like the right line depends on the operation, depends on the nuance of their network. It depends on what they need, what they want. But I can assure you, and the best example is, not this past summer, but the summer before, when the Teamsters almost went on strike, any single sourced UPS shipper was literally shitting bricks in July of 2024.
Yeah.
Because like, what are they going to do? If the Teamsters went out, which thankfully they didn't, I'm really thankful they didn't, like that would have been horrendous.
Are you sure you're from Chicago?
No, but listen, man, like I think anti-fragile in this era of small parcel shipping means you have the team, the data, and the tools to add more than, for most meaningful shippers, more than 2 parcel carriers.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Let's say, okay, how many nodes, how many relationships are you basically connecting for your most complex accounts?
For our most complex accounts, what we do for them is, I would say for each facility, so putting aside their relationship with the national parcel carriers, which we intentionally do not operate or manage. they'll have a relationship with either a FedEx or a UPS. They'll often have a relationship with some kind of a parcel select provider, so like an OSM, a DHL e-commerce, UPS MI, etc. And then it's the alternatives that we manage. For our biggest shippers, we manage between 4 and 6, 7. One building has 7. I'd say call it 5 on average for a big enterprise shipper.
Okay.
Now, which 5 we look at every single week. Now, we don't make changes every single week, but we do the diligence. So our system is looking at performance in real time all the time. But we sit down in our weekly call, my ops team and their ops team, and we review performance weekly. And we might make small adjustments week to week. And what we'll see, though, in those cadences is like, okay, well, their carrier A's performance has decremented by 2%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not horrible, but let's keep an eye on it.
Sure.
Next week, it decremented another 2%. Okay, this is bad now. We've escalated. If they can't fix it, we'll take action. Third week, it's still bad. Boom, we're going to make a change.
Okay.
And it's like, at that point, okay, well, then it went from 4 to 5. Or maybe we slotted a new carrier in and we booted that carrier. Like, that's the level of nuance and control and visibility that does not exist at scale.
So one of the biggest headaches I hear, especially if you're evaluating it week to week to week, is the billing perspective. Because now you go from having
you speak like a 3PL. It has to like unify PDFs and CSVs, and the dates don't match.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, this is such a pain, and people don't realize it.
No, they don't.
People don't realize it.
But so how are your clients approaching it?
Painfully, to be quite honest.
Yep.
And thankfully, what we've done is we unify the invoices. So we take in all the invoices from the carriers, no matter the format, no matter the dates, and we unify them on a standardized weekly date range. We then invoice our shippers with a standard invoice. It's really consistent when it comes from us, but they still have the burden of matching my invoices to their FedEx invoices or their UPS invoices. So the way people solve for this is they just throw humans at it today. There are a lot of emerging solutions that are getting there's some good startups that are building invoicing features for 3PLs and unified invoicing, and some TMSs are like waking up to the pain of this.
Mm-hmm.
Some WMSs are doing really compelling things of like building a really helpful billing layer for small parcel, but then also doing the other part, which you know really well, which is all of my WMS billing, all my pick and pack building, all of my I did a marketing insert for this guy. It took an extra 2 people, 8 hours. I got to build an hourly rate for that. Like that's, you know this, it's so painful. And anytime you wait a day to do the billing, you're extending your day's cash outstanding. It hurts your business. So the way we solve it is we solve it within our sandbox, which is the alternative carriers that shipper use. That's what is in our control today.
And then you're giving basically an invoice of all those carriers conglomerated into a single.
Yeah.
Or you're giving a single unified invoice.
Yeah, we're giving a single unified invoice for the carriers that they access through Tusk today.
And then you're effectively like, so on the back end, if you say, wow, got you're at 5, but it makes sense to add these other 2. All I see is just the increase on the invoice line.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would see more parcel rows where the carrier is listed that you used. So carrier number 6, it just shows up on that unified invoice as carrier number 6, but you get one bill from Tusk. And so like you have one account payable to us, which is like, it's a big help. And then you have me hounding you when you're late on paying. So like you pay on time. But yeah, the billing thing is actually you were asking about insurance earlier. That's a really cool space too. Like especially 3PL billing and like brand or client level markups that 3PLs could like maximize and take more advantage of. And like, this is a really cool space.
I don't know if I share your enthusiasm. I've spent the last year trying to streamline our billing automation.
Whoa. So what did you find? Did you solve it?
It's better, but it's not ideal.
That, by the way, that you're already above average.
Well,
right there, you're above average.
I think I'm above average in the negative categories. So inherently negative. No. No, we've thrown a lot of manpower at doing it, and as the way I characterize all WMSs is somebody had a problem, nobody could fix it, nobody could fix it. They had an entrepreneurial seizure and said, "I'm going to do it myself," because the way I view what goes on in the four walls is the best way to possibly do it. And so they built all this logic, and then they were like, "Oh, we created this thing that's so cool. Everybody else is going to want to buy it now."
Yep.
And then they go and they start selling it, and then it's like you invariably, because you weren't there working with that customer, you're like, why in the world did they do it this way? And why can't we just do it this way? And so if you don't have, if the way you bill doesn't exactly match the logic of the way the system is set up in the first place, you're either going to go through a process of retooling the way you bill, or you're going to go through the process of creating, fixes. Like you're gonna put duct tape on the outside of the boat.
Yeah, no. I would say that above all else, the pain point we hear the most is shipping is too expensive, right? Like that's cost is too high. Right after that, the pain points that we hear are billing or difficulty selling. Because every 3PL, so one of my 3PLs, they literally call it the smart Zack file. They have an analyst named Zack, and he built like a big Excel file with tons of macros, tons of tabs. Each tab is a carrier. So when they get a PLD from an inbound prospect, they throw the PLD into the smart Zack file. But the smart Zack file doesn't automatically update when a carrier changes fees, coverage, or DAS zips. And it's out of date as soon as it's updated, basically. And like that is another, it's related to billing if you squint a little bit, but that's another really cool area that we have heard from our 3PL partners that they would really like help with is like on the sales side.
Well, it's really interesting because, each individual carrier does a good job of communicating the data the way they like to communicate it, or at least they try to, seemingly. And so, and a lot of the resellers and software, things out there, I'm trying to think of the one that sends a great little email that just says, "Hey, these are the cutoff dates for for these services, during the holiday peak season. This is what surcharges look like." And it just lines it out, and you're like, okay, I can, thank you, critical dates, critical increases, that kind of thing. It feels like in the rate card space, I mean, because I think the number is 60% is what shipping costs of your, like 60% of your supply chain costs are the actual movement of the box itself, or the poly mailer, whatever it may be. I might be off on that, but I think that's what I'm remembering. Anyway, all of that data is the ripe use case for AI or predictive analytics to just dump your contract into a file and dump their zone, I mean their zip code list into a file. And then that way it just says, okay, well, these are the rural areas. So, this is where this surcharge is going to apply. And then as long as as long as on your contract, when that rate goes up, you get the exact, the new rate card. It seems like that would be one of the easiest things. And then also when it comes to like comparing shipping data, where, just give me your order report, give me your order history for the last month. You should be able to upload it and it spits out we can save you 15%. You should stay where you're at, whatever it may be.
Yeah. The industry is moving in this direction and fast.
It is.
Like that last piece you just said, we call that an impact analysis. So we take a PLD file, we run it as if Tusk were live in that facility or facilities, and we spit out not just, hey, Mark, you could save X amount of dollars. It's like, hey, Mark, you can save X, and here's how. Here are the carriers. Here's from each of your facilities. Here's the speed you should expect, the average price. Like we give it all. The previous thing you were talking about with like uploading and like basically, as I understand it, you're describing like a dynamic parcel environment.
Yes.
And we are not there yet. Our industry is not there yet, to be clear. It's in pieces, but it's moving in that direction. When it comes though to like, and you're an operator, this is a question for you. When we talk to operators and we have these like bigger conversations about the future of like, dynamic parcel and automatic, Booleans of if this falls below this service level, then, or the service quality, then kick it to this. What I have found, to be quite honest, is the director of operations who is responsible for the unit cost of doing pick, pack, and ship, they get worried and they do not trust an automated system yet. And there's a certain level of like a release of control that in general most operators are not down for.
In my experience, we haven't grown to the scale where I've got an operator that feels that kind of ownership and that much onus on them, that it's that much. I mean, all of my guys feel like they are an extension of our customer. And that's the way I say, look, our customers don't succeed if we don't, our customers do not succeed unless we do exactly what we say we're going to for them. And then in turn, we don't succeed.
Right.
Because they'll go somewhere else.
Right.
And so I tell all of my guys, I say, you must treat this as if you're doing this and your mother's life depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in the same, week, I'll also say it's not heart surgery. Don't rush to the, nobody's going to die. But, so, I mean,
both things can be true. Can be true.
It's the scenario that matters. When I want them paying attention to, that level of detail, they absolutely need to treat it with great importance and getting it right. And, we say, safety first, accuracy over speed, always. But I still want them to be fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
right.
And correct. Yeah. Accuracy over speed.
Yeah.
And I think my guys in particular have looked at the things that automate and it just works. They're happy to adopt it because if, it leads to, the places where we are looking at automation are focused around improving accuracy, improving throughput. And if a guy is able to do packing faster and, at a more accurate rate, then we're not on them quite as much. And so I think that's a benefit. I mean, they look at it, typically the automations we've deployed at this point as benefits, but but when I say automations, I mean, we do have some machines that make things a lot faster and a lot more consistent. They've loved those changes. But then we also have like some of the data accuracy stuff. And then, like you can have you would have somebody just fill out a forklift checklist so you could have it for OSHA. And then fortunately, like we've got a program on our forklifts that they can't even start the things unless they go and they answer all the pre-checked questions.
Right.
And so those sorts of things, once they're used to doing them, it's great.
Well, I think, so back to like what this means in practice for something like dynamic parcel pricing is an operation will agree with a carrier to a maximum price. This is my personal opinion. They will, like when they negotiate on rate cards, what they're going to be negotiating for is the top. And then the carrier, at the carrier's discretion, will be able to dynamically lower price. And now they might in the contract say, hey, I'm the carrier, you're my shipper. Mark, I'm going to negotiate with you so that we set the cap at $10, but I'm going to negotiate to actually go up to 11 if I need to.
Right.
But in exchange, I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z, right? And all of a sudden, then you can see, okay, now prices could go up under certain circumstances. But in general, I think people are going to negotiate for a cap, and then the carrier will be able to flex down when that carrier wants to cube out a truck on a certain lane, or they just opened a new market and they want to fill it up. So like, that's the way I think it will happen. And in that use case, then it's a lot easier for the operator to say yes.
Oh, sure.
Because prices are only going to go down.
Absolutely. I think the thing that we run into, because we rate shop, we and a lot of, unfortunately, our TMS.
How do you do it? What's your TMS?
So we use iDrive's TMS.
Oh yeah,
it's homegrown.
Yep.
And what's nice is because they own the contracts, they are able to their rate shopping landed cost is and that's huge. But what I will say is my guys' trust that they put into that rate shop, sometimes I've noticed it dulls the critical eye. And so if one out of every 100 things gets like, ships way up here, who knows what it is? Maybe there was a data integrity issue. Maybe my customer, when they gave me over
they shipped it express instead of ground.
Right.
Yeah.
They catch a few like less of those.
Yeah.
And that is that can be frustrating, but it's like, the technology just needs to get better. And this is one, and on the whole, we're saving money.
Mm-hmm.
This is just an opportunity and for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the ways we look at it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
As an operator of a 3PL,
Mm-hmm.
what is the biggest pain point in your business today? Like, what keeps you up at night?
So as I have the benefit of having two guys. I have a person in each location that operates the business, and so that allows me. So I live in Texas. I moved back to be close to family. Lived in California. Went into the operation every day for the first 4.5 years, and then spent a lot of time out in North Carolina while we were getting that up. My operator in Southern California was on everything he learned was on the job, and everything. And I knew him outside of the industry. So we both figured out 3PLing on the fly, OTJ. And then the guy in my operator in North Carolina was just a blessing. He was an absolute stud at this other 3PL, and that 3PL was just shutting down. And he led main shift. He was just, he crushed it. And I looked at his resume and I was like, "There's no way this guy's available." And talked to him, and
every once in a while, man, stars align.
Stars aligned. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to focus on much more strategic things as opposed to being like really in depth in the operation. And I do, sometimes I over rely on that, and I need to get back. I feel that it kind of keeps me up. It's like, am I spending enough time in the individual shops? So that's one. And two is, you come to an event like this and you see everything that's going on in the world, and you're like, man, I don't know enough to. I just don't. I just know so little. It's like you come here and it's like you think you're on solid footing, and then you hear somebody say, it's like, well, we're testing humanoid robots, and our cost per hour to operate them is $5 per hour, and you're like, oh, now. There's a whole, obviously, we were talking about it earlier, there's a whole, that person also said, yeah, but it's not a 1-to-1 hour for hour humanoid robot versus like an hour of human labor. But, it just goes to kind of show like where the scale of the problems you're focused on. And I think what keeps me up is, what am I doing to shout from the rooftops? How am I really good? Like where am I going to serve my customers the best? And I actually, and you think of things like, there are a lot of people that don't know the differences of a pallet. They're just like, they don't know that a pallet's 5 inches. They don't know that it weighs, if it's a grade B 4-way pallet, it weighs
40 by 48.
30 to 35 pounds. 35 to 40 pounds, depending on, depending on the material and everything. Wood pallet, though. Don't know the difference between grade, heat treat, non-heat treat. And, there's all these sorts of things. Why won't Amazon take this kind of pallet or that kind of pallet? So it's like there are things so simple that just like are up in my head that like we and every operator's head for that matter. And we forget that there's this whole group of people starting businesses and selling products. And somebody, we just onboarded a customer, and they, the woman worked at Google, and she started importing these super high-end things from India that you just don't see on the shelves that often. And, and she's like, oh, we can do this slow. I want to do it right. And you forget that those people need that education. Like, well, this is why we do this, and this is why we do this. And, oh, if you set up this connection, or you use this on your website, this will help us here, here, and here. So there's a whole education conveyor, I guess you could kind of think of it, that will attract these, and I don't want to call them unsophisticated, but not yet learned people starting and needing like 3PLs.
Well, think of like the downstream benefit op too. When they, first of all, when they grow, when their business grows.
Certainly, we've had many customers.
But also like when they give you cleaner data, when they add the correct shipping options to their shopping cart that match with the options you can provide in the building.
Yep. So
like just like the basics.
So when we were very early on, I mean, I would get on a sales call and we'd be onboarding that, be like, okay, what do you need from us? I was like, well, just, make sure the data's good. Like, because garbage in, garbage out. And I mean, they're like, okay, nobody's going to be like, well, what do you, I mean, very few people are like, what do you mean by that?
Can you give me the format?
Exactly. And I mean, no, we would give them the format, but then it was, we use Extensive as our WMS. And if you look at, how many columns of information you can put into a single SKU. At first, you look at it and you're like, oh, I mean, we only fill out like 5 of these. And then as we got down, down the pathway, we started figuring out, oh, in order to do billing the way we need to do billing, well, we need all the carton data. We need this. We need
the lot number.
And and why do you carry this? And why do you, so there's all this stuff where we've just gotten better over the years. We figured it out, school of hard knocks. And so I really think, and I mean, I've talked to, about this with other, kind of founder-led operations where, I'm playing sales, I'm playing, making sure COO, CEO, and CFO. And so it's like one of those things at the scale that I'm operating at where it's like I look around and I'm like, okay, I think that I could do a much better job of yelling from the rooftops why we're good and why we're a good fit for customers, because the customers we've had customers since day one that are still with us, and that's I'm very proud of those relationships. But it's not rocket science. It's generally doing what you say you're going to do and being consistent, and owning it when you step in it.
Well, another way of saying that is just being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So to tie it up, it's a very long-winded way of saying, what keeps me up is, am I giving, investor relations, like, am I giving all the buckets enough of my effort and time? And then am I doing the right by our customers to really show how we're going to crush it for them and attract them? Because I mean, ultimately, if you don't grow, you die.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
And, I think this is a nice little segue, because it's like a year or two ago, I looked at it and I mean, I had the realization, I was like, okay, if you're just UPS, if you're just FedEx, it's a hard road. You're hoeing it's a hard road to hoe. And so I said, okay, well, you definitely need multi-carrier. Like you have to have, because, FedEx is going to be better in these lanes and, with this product, UPS will be better here. But then if you've got this small, and light, okay, well, if you can get an Amazon parcel, then that's another great option. And then, okay, well, USPS. And then now, if any one of them goes down, you can switch over and, vice versa. And you can educate your customers on what you're doing. But as I've dug more into the, coming back to how the Chinese companies, and not just China, but, as you said, the Amazon Fulfillment Network, ship with Walmart. Here's a great example. We had a customer who's doing great volume with this pick and pack, and they come back and they're like, "Hey, can you give us better rates? Because we're getting offered, the ship with Walmart rate."
Oh, so wait, I know we're like building towards the end here, Mark, but this is a super interesting dynamic.
Listen, we don't have to be the end.
So what is happening often is, especially in the alternative carrier ecosystem, the alternative carriers are growing, which means, they are having bigger sales teams than alternative carriers have ever had. They're also better sales teams, to be clear.
Yep.
So the traditional regional carrier 10 years ago had, max of like 10 people, max. Usually it was like 2. It was like the founder and maybe one other sales guy or 2 sales guys or gals. And now, your clients are being pitched by a carrier, and they're seeing the base rate, the
Sure.
unmarked up 3PL rate. And so then they come to you and say, hey, Mark, like, yeah, exactly. Like, I got these rates. Why are you charging me so much more? And I think our industry needs to back to honesty. I think that the good operators can tell the client, hey, the reason I mark up shipping is because I keep your pick and pack low. And I only charge you $10 a pallet per month for storage. And like my final mile revenue, like that's my revenue. Oh, and by the way, that revenue is tied to your success.
Mm-hmm.
It grows in line with the number of sales you have. Oh, and by the way, remember when we started that I was able to lower your effective final mile. So yeah, you're getting cherry picked by a vendor, but to be honest with you, if you go do a deal with them and I support that deal, I'm going to need to increase your pack rate.
So I really like the way you're selling it more than the way I sell it. Because
also, I should caveat that if the customer is going to leave you, you should keep the customer.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so do what you need to do.
One of my other professors, once, I said, well, it was an MBA program, and I said, well, but the customer's always right. He's like, the customer's always right if the customer's right for you.
Yes.
So
Preach.
It was a great thing. It stuck with me. But the way I sell our rates, and to be clear, Ship with Walmart was all in $6, and our base rate, like base contract rate, was $9.
For how heavy?
This was like a 10 by 10 by 12 at like 6 pounds or something.
Okay.
Going to zone 4. Insane. I mean, it was like we looked at that. I mean, and my client, this particular client, still with us. They love us. They're awesome. But their e-com person was like, I mean, look, we want to ship with you, because we like you, but if there's a delta, like, and then once the accessorials get loaded on there, you're at $15 versus, I literally think it was $6.90 all in.
So for those listening, I'm now pulling up my rate card, and just to quote some examples, like zone 4, you said it was 6 pounds?
Yeah, something like 6.4, whatever it would have been.
Yeah, like with the alternatives, it's like 671 loaded. It's 693 loaded. It's let me put one that a really good one here. Yeah, 646 loaded. Like,
so the point is, and I think this is with the Chinese carriers, Amazon as a fulfillment network, Target's fulfillment network, Walmart, their Ship with Walmart, all that sort of stuff. I don't think, we as, I always say there are two things certain in this industry over the next decade or two.
mm-hmm.
That's consolidation and automation. And the longer you want to stay afloat, we operators have to constantly be looking for options and adapting, and things that like we just look at and we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It just sounds like a lot of work. Well, partner, the person that wins is the one that solves the most problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is so critical, figuring out these like alternative ways of shipping and like being competitive with Ship with Walmart and all that sort of stuff, or, Amazon, whatever it may be.
One thing, just as like a final piece of advice that I'm seeing more and more, that I think is super smart for 3PLs in particular,
mm-hmm.
is when you sign a new client,
mm-hmm.
you give them a generic parcel delivery rate card. And by generic, what I mean is I've seen it in all kinds of ways, shapes, and forms, but it might be, 1 ounce to 8 ounce, 8 ounce to 15.99, and then 1 pound to 5 pounds, 5 pounds to 10, 10 to 15,
yep,
etc. by zone. And you build a generic rate card for the client.
Right.
So they can plan it. They know what it's going to be. But then you have the decision control as the operator to do all the optimization on your end.
Yep.
And you can then control your level and tolerance for risk.
Right.
You can cut to the bone on ounce based. and you can make more on above a pound for a certain client, it gives you a lot of control, and it helps you to maximize margin on final mile while keeping the control in your hands.
Right. Something I also, I mean, I'm really excited about all the potential options for technology and the way that people are going to. And it's like, I almost I don't like saying AI as much as I like calling what it is predictive analytics. And
Yeah,
I mean,
machine learning.
Machine learning.
Yeah.
But with the way that, I mean, in our industry, in the supply chain, there's just everything is metric based. How long is it? This is what I mean, I decided the reason why we get along so well immediately is because you described exactly why I love supply chain, because, and what I always say, it's a little bit different, but it's like, if it comes into the building, it's got to leave the building, or it's there.
Oh yeah,
there's no question.
Oh yeah, or it's paying rent while it's here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, now it may go out on a truck, and it may go out in some guy's pocket, but we have things in place to avoid that too. But I'm just saying, it's like it has to leave somehow.
Yep.
Or it's in the corner somewhere. Anyway, so I love that visceral nature of this industry as well. But everything, whether the dimensions, the weights, how much the box cost, how much tape did you use, how much everything is measurable.
Oh yeah.
And because all of that exists, I look forward to times when it's like we have a running tally of like, okay, today, we're January 21, 22, whatever it is. And, if you, so far in 2026, if you were with your old provider, just on shipping, we've already saved you $30,000. And those benchmarking metrics, it's like, hey, it's like we said we were going to do this, and this is how we're performing on it. But like the ability to hold yourself accountable, the ability to, I envision
track value accurately.
I envision, a future in the not so distant where my customers can log into their customer portal and they see, based on this month, here's where your charges are. Like, it's like just a running ticker. And so if they, if they have a big sale or whatever, it's like, okay, here, you saw it for the, for the last, progressive days. And so it's like on the first, it's not, that bill should not be a surprise to you.
No.
Or whoever's, going to pay it.
Right.
And so I really look forward to a lot of those things. And I look forward to just kind of really seeing, what the next several years leads for us. But
just another way of being honest with people, by the way.
Yeah. Honesty and transparency.
Yeah.
And I think, we always say, one of my philosophies in running the business is effectively like, and I tell all my guys this, it's like, your customer should never be contacting you to receive bad news.
No.
So, I said, do everything you can to take the bullets out of their gun. Say,
oh yeah,
hey Ben, I know we said we were going to do this. This is why, we tried. This is why we messed up. Or, hey, I told you I was going to do this. Here you go. We did it. So a couple things. First, let's start to wrap up. Unless you want to, is there anything?
No. I'm all my good advice is gone.
Okay. So, how can people? Okay. So when does it start to make sense to work with Tusk?
Yeah. So I would say when you're spending more than $1 million a year domestically is when you should call Tusk.
Okay.
So tusklogistics.com. If folks are coming to Manifest, we'll be at Manifest. We have a booth at Manifest, so find us. The best way to analyze if alternative carriers are for you is to give us a PLD file. So parcel level data, roughly a month. We need like 5 fields. So origin zip, destination zip, weight, dim, and price paid. And we can tell you exactly the margin you'd unlock with alternative carriers nationwide.
Yep. And so what is a statistically relevant? So, I mean, I guess a month is going to be a couple.
Yeah, a month is like a good proxy.
Okay. And that's if they're doing $1 million a year.
Yeah, if $1 million a year. If you're doing, call it 5 million or more, then you should rush to the phone and call us because the savings will be significant. Because that's about the range that you can start to do some zone skipping too. So that unlocks additional value.
Outstanding. Last question. How do people connect with you, follow you, that kind of thing?
Well, the best way is via email. So BEMMRICH at tusklogistics.com. And then I love kind of like joshing with folks on LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn. So it's Ben Emmrich, EMMRICH on LinkedIn. And every Monday, sometimes on Tuesday if I'm lazy, I post alternative carrier performance reports. So that for the previous week, how all the alternative carriers are doing. We highlight interesting nuance in the ecosystem, tell you who's doing really good. So you can get a pulse of the alternative carrier quality before you give us your data and we run numbers for your op.
You put that on Substack, or is that just
on LinkedIn? And then we publish it on our website too. So tusklogistics.com. If you click the top under resources, there's an alternative carrier data section that we publish.
Do you have like a little stock ticker that's like showing?
I wish eventually we will. But this is just like yours truly, like you, founder doing it all. So.
All right, man. Well, hey, one, super interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Great to meet you and really enjoyed the conversation. And thank you to anybody who's made it this far.
Amen. Shippers first.
That's right. All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya.